Same gate, same night, same exposure. One framing decision, and the entire energy of the photograph changes. The wider frame, with the street lights on both sides, is the stronger photograph. And the only thing that changed was how I framed the scene. Every decision you make, where you stand, how you hold the camera, when you press the shutter, either reveals that geometry or hides it. Geometry begins with patterns, cables radiating from a single point. The pattern exists in the engineering. Your job is to find the angle that reveals it. Every floor identical, shot from below. Repetition becomes rhythm. 9 centuries old, 3000 odd steps. Chandbaudi in Rajasthan was built to harvest water and became one of the most geometrically perfect spaces ever built. Look up. Architecture saves its best patterns for the ceiling. Pays pyramid from inside. The triangular grid above. The crowd below. Scale and pattern in the same frame. There is only one position for this shot, directly below. Same geometry, different civilization, different century. Warm sandstone instead of cold steel. The pattern is universal, only the material changes. Patterns hold your eye. Leading lines move it. Two-line system in one frame. The tiled floor pulls you forward. The minaret stops you. That tension creates the photograph. Dead center. Single vanishing point. The entire bridge drives your eye forward. Red square at golden hour. The cobblestone lines converge on the State Historical Museum. You don't compose this, you wait for it. Leading lines, they don't only run horizontal. Look up, and every Gothic arch pulls your eyes towards heaven. That was the architect's intention and yours. These tracks lead to the gate of death at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Every person who arrived here followed this line. Leading lines carry weight, sometimes unbearable weight. Leading lines guide the eye. Distortion changes the emotion. Straight up from directly below. Nobody standing besides the Eiffel Tower sees this. Distortion creates awe. A modern tower shot from the base. The verticals converge. The grid warps. The convergence exaggerates height. The building begins to feel overpowering. Distortion creates power. Now watch what happens when you don't distort. Camera parallel to the ground. Buland Darwaza, the gate of victory at Fatehpur Sikri, stands stable, balanced and undisturbed. Correction preserves intention. Camera level, parallel to the ground. The Mughal arch at Lodi Garden needs no drama. The architecture is the drama. Correction preserves calmness. 4 pillars. Camera parallel, dead center. Distortion would have destroyed the symmetry. Sometimes the most powerful decision is to do nothing. Correction preserves symmetry. Same building, move 10 meters, completely different photograph. Most photographers find a position and stop. The best ones treat position as a question, not an answer. Position has three jigsaw pieces. Vantage is the first, and it begins with a question: how high or how low do you need to be? Hawa Mahal sits on a sloping road. The architect solved the slope in the first floor itself. Everything above it is level. You understand that from a higher vantage. From street level, the slope is invisible. Elevation revealed the story. From the London Eye, the Thames became a thread connecting everything: Parliament, the bridges, the city beyond. You cannot tell this story from the ground. Height revealed the relationship. This was shot 25 kilometers from the Burj, not from its base, not from downtown Dubai, from 25 kilometers away. Because that's the only distance at which you understand how tall it is. The old city of Warsaw. From street level, you get only one building or two. From this elevated vantage, you get an entire civilization: the square, the rooftops, the cathedral, the city wall. UNESCO site needs context. Context needs height. I used Google Earth to identify this exact location before booking the hotel room. The harbour bridge on the left, the opera house on the right, both in the same frame. Vantage is not always about where you stand. Sometimes it is about where you sleep. Vantage is where you stand. Frames are what you stand behind. The entrance arch of Bangla Sahib, a formal frame built into the architecture intended to be walked through. But step back and it becomes your viewfinder. The Golden Dome sits exactly where the architect placed it. Your job was simply to stand in the right place. A modern convention center in Gujarat. The installation frames the view deliberately, and through it, a charkha, Gandhi's spinning wheel, visible through a contemporary frame. The architect and the photographer arrived at the same intention. Nobody designed these curtains as a photographic frame, but pulled apart just enough, they compress the entire scene: the terrace, the diners, the palace, the sky, into a single layered image. That is an informal frame. You didn't find it, you noticed it. A pre wedding shoot, someone else's balloons, Moscow State University behind. I didn't plan this frame. I spotted it, moved into position, and waited for the balloons to align. Informal frames are everywhere. Most people never notice them. The harbor doesn't frame the opera house, the water does. Not a physical boundary, just the surrounding negative space that isolates the subject and gives it room to breathe. The most powerful frames are sometimes the ones you can't touch. Frames control what you see, scale controls what you feel. These colossal figures weren't built, they were carved out of the mountain itself. The child standing at the base is not incidental, he is the measurement. Without him, you have a statue. With him, you have a statement about human devotion. The figure at the end of the corridor is tiny. The arch above is enormous. That single person tells you everything about the ambition of Mughal architecture, and nothing in the frame needed to be moved. 300 meters of iron. The crowd at the base is not a distraction. It is the only thing that tells you how tall 300 meters actually is. Without them, the tower is just geometry. With them, it becomes an achievement. The nave of Westminster Abbey. The tourist in the foreground has no idea he is doing you a favor. He is telling you how high those columns actually go. 110 meters of titanium angled at the sky. The figures at the base are barely visible. That invisibility is the point. The monument was designed to make humans feel small in the presence of a larger ambition. Position determines your geometry. Light determines your mood. And unlike position, you cannot control it. You can only be ready for it. Lighting is the first piece of shooting light, and it begins with a room that should have been impossible to photograph. A single source of light, the carved sandstone window, the interior is in near darkness. Most photographers would walk past this. The difficulty is the photograph. Navigate the light, and the space reveals itself. A metro station where the platform wall is a floor to ceiling window, bright daylight outside, relative darkness inside, the Moskva River, the Luzhniki Stadium, a passing ferry, all framed by the window grid. The interior and the exterior exist in the same frame, each lit entirely differently. The challenge was to expose for both. Two light sources, the warm artificial light lifting the sculptures from below, above, the cloud catching the last of the sunlight against a cooling sky. Neither is wrong. Together, they create a tension that neither could create alone. Light is the source, shadow is a consequence, and reflection is light's second chance at the same subject. The shadow of the railing falls across the dome. Without it, the dome is just a dome. The shadow gives it a dimension, direction, and time of the day. Remove the shadow, and photograph loses half its information. An unremarkable gate, but the shadow it casts is extraordinary, graphic, geometric, absolute. The gate is the subject, the shadow is the photograph. The curved wall of Sanchi Stoop. Strong directional light creates a gradient from highlight to shadow that reveals the mass and weight of 2000-year-old stone. Flat light would have flattened the wall. Shadow gave it form. Still water, early morning, Humayun's tomb and its reflection are almost identical. Almost. The reflection is slightly softer, slightly cooler. That imperfection is what makes it beautiful. Night. The buildings are lit. The canal doubles them. The reflection is not a copy, it is a distortion stretched by water's movement into something more painterly than the original. A shop window in Sydney. The building across the street reflected in the glass, layered over the interior behind it. Nobody designed this reflection. It appeared. The only skill required was to see it. Shadow is about how light falls. Day versus night is about which light you choose to shoot in. And sometimes the building you see at the noon is not the building that exists at night. The same resort in Pushkar, daytime, warm stone, clear sky, functional and beautiful. After dark, uplighting transforms every surface. The architecture hasn't changed. The light has rewritten it. The Harbour Bridge in daylight, it shows you the engineering. At night, with the city reflected in the water and the light trails from vehicles on the bridge, it becomes something else entirely. The bridge as the anchor of a living city. Red Square, daytime, tourists, flat light, a postcard. After dark, wet cobblestones, dramatic sky, the Kremlin, the State Historical Museum, and the GUM lit against the blue hour. The square empties, the photograph fills. This mall is unremarkable in daylight. At night, the LED facade turns the entire building into a screen. There is no day version worth shooting. Some buildings are simply not designed for the sun. Day versus night is a choice you make before you shoot. Dynamic range is a challenge you face the moment you raise your camera. Your eye can handle 20 stops of light. Your camera can manage 12, 13 at the most. Everything outside that range is either black or white. The edit is your attempt to recover what the camera couldn't hold. The Thai royal palace under an overcast sky. The before. Sky blown out, shadows blocked, details lost at both ends. The after. Sky recovered, shadow details pulled back, nothing was added. Everything was already there, waiting in the file. An interior with a view. Bright light flooding through the windows, darkness inside. The camera cannot hold both in a single exposure without help. The edit bridges the gap, preserving the interior atmosphere while recovering what the windows were trying to show. Tel Aviv at dusk. The sky is doing extraordinary things. The beach below is in relative darkness. Expose for the sky and lose the beach. Expose for the beach and lose the sky. The edit finds the middle and holds both. Light tells you when. Story tells you why. A facade shows you what a building looks like. A photograph should show you what it means. Details is the first piece of shooting story, and it begins with looking closer than everyone else. Gustave Eiffel decorated the iron lattice with ornamental arches that nobody at street level can see. He did it anyway. The detail was not for public. It was for the integrity of the work. Get close enough and engineering becomes art. A stepwell built in the 11th century as a monument to a dead king. Every surface carved. Over 1,000 sculptures across 7 levels. The facade tells you nothing. The detail tells you this was an act of devotion, not just construction. A Haussmann-style balcony in Krakow. The ironwork, the carved stone figures, the proportions. Every detail places this building in its century. You don't need a caption. The architecture is the caption. Arabic calligraphy carved into the arch of a Lodi-era mosque in Delhi. This is not decoration. In Islamic architecture, the word of God is the ornament. The calligraphy is the theology made visible. The red windmill on the roof of Moulin Rouge. You don't need to read the sign. The windmill tells you exactly where you are and exactly what kind of place it is. Identity detail at its most deliberate. A pub sign on Northumberland Street, London. Hand illustrated, hung at eye level, swinging in the wind. It tells you the name, the character, the neighborhood, and the culture of the place in a space of a painted board. A church window, except it isn't. Hard rock borrowed the most sacred form of Western architecture to defy rock and roll. Elvis enthroned, the king. The format is reverent, the subject is deliberately not. Detail as subversion. Hammer and sickle in gold, set into Corinthian marble columns inside a metro station. Stalin wanted Soviet citizens to commute through palaces. The ideological detail is embedded in the classical form. The column tells you the aspiration, the emblem tells you the ideology. Ancient stone and modern steel, the access staircase bolted onto cliff face of Masada. 2000 years of history, and we still want to reach it badly enough to engineer a way up. The detail is the dialogue between then and now. 3 words in wrought iron above a gate. Arbeit macht frei, or work sets you free. The most cynical detail in the history of architecture, and the most photographed. Some details carry the weight of everything that happened behind them. Details interpret the building. Weather interprets the moment. The same structure under different skies is a different photograph altogether. The sky over Sydney Harbour is doing more work than the Opera House. The bruised clouds, the electric blue light before the storm breaks, the building hasn't changed. Atmosphere has charged it. Warsaw's Palace of Culture and Science lit against an angry sky. The city below still moving, traffic still flowing. The storm hasn't arrived, but you can feel it pressing down. Pre-storm light is the most dramatic light there is, and it lasts minutes. A bride in a doorway, rain on the pavement. Most photographers pack up when it rains. The wet surface, the grey light, the human moment in the frame. Rain didn't ruin this photograph, rain made it. A blizzard in Gulmarg, a lone figure pulling a sledge past a snow-covered kiosk. Visibility down to meters. The architecture is barely there, and that absence is the point. Sometimes, weather doesn't reveal the building, it replaces it. The morning after. The same valley, the same chalets, the same pine forest, buried under fresh snow. The storm has passed and left everything quieter, cleaner, and more still than it will ever be again. Shoot before it melts. Every photograph in this video was made with the same tools you have. The difference was in the decisions. Where to stand, when to shoot, what to look for, how close to get. That is what separates a record from a photograph. I am Ajay Sood. This is Travel Your. Go make some photographs.